Hello and welcome to the Sketching Greyhound. Today, once again, I feel like I'm saying that all the time now. This is a special video, at least for me, because I will be trying something completely new. We will be painting a picture with coffee. I've not even drawn or painted that much with watercolors, so I still hope that drawing with coffee, painting with coffee is a little bit like that, so I have at least a little bit of experience. But we'll find out together. And we will also be drawing quite a special model for this, and very fitting model, Jacksepticeye, because he has his own brand of coffee. Top of the Morning coffee. And that is also the one that we will be using to paint him. I think that's quite fitting. I have not opened it yet, so we will do that now together. Might be a little bit loud, I'm sorry for that. Really looking forward to smell the beans. They smell pretty good, so time to make paint out of it. Our coffee machine is not exactly the newest model or the most fanciest one, but it allows me to take the full beans, and I like that idea. But we want our paint to be fully Top of the Morning coffee and not any of the usual beans that I'm using, which are, quite honestly, quite a lot cheaper than the Top of the Morning ones. So first, we have to remove all the beans from the tank. Next, we have to brew a coffee to remove all the beans that are still remaining in the inside of the machine. Then, new beans in. And this is the sound of Top of the Morning coffee. And this is our paint. But as you can see, it is still very thin, so we probably have to do something about that. So let's make a first test. As you can see, it looks plenty concentrated, but we will have to see how it spreads on a piece of paper. So let's test it on this piece of watercolor paper that I already tested some things for my tarot card on. And yeah, we were right. This is much too thin to achieve any kind of satisfying contrast. The only thing we need for that is a stove, a pot, and quite some time. By the way, if you really also want to paint with coffee, you can save yourself a lot of headaches with this and just not take any fresh coffee. You can just take the instant one and just mix it in a relation with water how strong you want to have it. It's a lot easier, but not what I planned for this, so I vow to stay on course and not cheat and sit this one out. About 50 minutes later, and it looks a lot more promising. It was still nowhere where I really wanted it to be at this point, honestly, but it is coffee. It is not watercolor, it is not gouache, it is not oil paint. It is and remains coffee. So I figured I'll have to live with that. So I tested a little bit. I tested how to layer the color to get from a lighter brown to a darker brown. As that looked very patchy, I tried to mix it up with water a little bit to have a smoother gradient here. And as I of course plan to pre-draw the picture with pencil, I also tried if I can still erase the pencil once I painted over it with coffee, because I was not sure how much of the coffee of the brown seeps into the paper and how much just coats it and seals off the pencil, because with watercolor you can still erase it. Unfortunately, my hunch was right, and there is no chance to erase the pencil after you have painted over it. So I would have to be very careful which lines I really pre-draw here. That made me a little bit nervous. Remember how I always tell you to set up yourself for success, especially when you try something new? Next time I probably should heed my own advice. One of the most important decisions you always take before you start drawing is which picture you will draw of a person if it is a portrait. In this case, I took an Instagram photo of him, pretty recent, 18 weeks old, but I did not make it easy on myself here. And in hindsight, I even think it's not extremely representative of him, as everyone's Instagram photos aren't often. For example, he does not wear his glasses that he does on his channel a lot in recent times. The positioning is not easy, his expression is very difficult to really capture, so on those accounts I did not really succeed in my first version. I say first version because obviously this was not my final try, so the official one, I would like to say. You have seen the thumbnail, you know that another picture is coming, and that's also why we are speeding through this one pretty fast here, because I don't want to bore you with this one. Although I have to say, in hindsight, I don't hate on it anymore that much. There were a couple of things that I could have done differently, but as you have seen all my tests I did with coffee, that was everything I did before. That is something that I do wrong. A lot of times I just jump into it and I just try, so this was, you say Lehrgeld in German. This was money I had to pay to learn, metaphorically. Time I had to spend to continue and then paint a picture that I am actually much more happy with. Make no mistake, this one took about 5 hours of my life, so... But let's talk about what went wrong with this one. So what did go wrong? Well, I am always a big fan of contrast, and this picture does not have any contrast almost. So we do not really have dark areas. We don't have really light areas because I have colored almost everything in of the face. So not that much of a contrast left there. And then I always try to correct areas that did not went well, so I just used water to practically try to erase what I have painted before and then paint over it. That worked surprisingly well for a long time, but in the end, especially in this area on his cheek, I started to really damage the paper because it just did not take the amount of water that I used, so it started to flake a little bit. You can't see it that much, but I wanted to correct this area even more and I couldn't, so it looks a little bit patchy there now. So we have to work on all of these things, especially with the contrast. I need more concentrated coffee. But I will spare you the process now. You have seen it, that's how I will do it again. Just more coffee long on the stove, and let's see if that helps. But without further ado, second try. For the second try, I took a completely different picture, and once again I did not learn my lesson. I did not exactly make it easier for me with those glasses, and as you can see, those reflections and the shadows that the glasses create, all of that stuff is also not exactly easy. But yeah, this is what I went with, and I took it this time directly from a video, so it's a little bit more representative of the Jacksepticeye I at least know. But at this point, you might start to wonder, who is this Jacksepticeye that he's talking about so much? And that's a fair question. Not everybody knows every YouTuber regardless of how big they are. Jacksepticeye, his real name is Seán McLoughlin, sits currently at almost 30 million subscribers, so he's on the bigger side. Seán mostly creates gaming videos, series where he plays games and comments on them, but he has also for a long time now started to do other stuff on his channel, so he calls his channel the Jacksepticeye Variety Channel, which is a very courageous thing to do. Most YouTubers don't do that, they don't mix different topics. They start just new channels basically for different genres. He didn't, and it works surprisingly well for him. When you hear gaming, you might think, okay, this is a kid's channel, that's why I don't know it. But it's definitely not. He is not really using family-friendly language. He plays horror-oriented video games also, not only, but also. So it's not a channel you probably should just park your kids in front of to keep them busy for a while if they are quite young. Which is anyway probably not the best thing to do in the world, to let your kids watch YouTube unsupervised. But that being said, there definitely would be worse channels that you could let your kid watch than Seán's. Last year he actually made a video about this website that is ranking different types of media, also YouTube commentators and YouTube channels, especially I think with the focus on kids and family friendliness. And while the reviews might be right in terms of the language that he is using, not being very kids friendly, what he's not going for, so that's completely fine. What I really take an issue with here is that they say that he does not have any positive messages.
Positive messages not present. Come on now.
And that there are no positive role models, because that could almost not be further from the truth. I mean, swearing aside, he puts out so many positive messages to people. He's all about PMA, which means positive mental attitude.
Guys, you're all such lovely human beings, and you're taking that positivity and spreading it out into the world, and I love that.
He's transparent about his own issues and therefore is not just only a very good example against toxic masculinity, but is simply an empowering influence.
So any of you going through that kind of stuff, I relate, I get it. But please talk to somebody about it. I should have talked to somebody about it.
I mean, with messages like this, if I had kids, I would be happy for him to be an influence on them.
I hope that things get better for you. And I know that things can get better for you.
So that is Jacksepticeye in a nutshell. And he's been posting videos for over 9 years at this point. So if you've seen him in the past, he was even more energetic, even louder. So if you did not like that, give him a chance again. He has mellowed a little bit. He's still the old Seán, I would say. He did not change completely, but it's all a little bit more refined. So all in all, I feel like he is an amazing entertainer and a fantastic person. So I did not really have that big of an issue with producing a video now that is basically an advertisement for his coffee company. But let's talk about the picture now. I think it went much better than the first one. There are a couple of key things that are the reason for this, as much as I see it. One is definitely the contrast. It is much darker in the darker places, and very important, I have left some spaces white, which also gives it more contrast in that direction. The next one, I did not overdo it with water and mixing down and trying to correct stuff. I lived with some areas that were not really perfect. I did not try to overcorrect, I did not damage the paper in this case. So yeah, that definitely also helped. I also did not overdo it with details. If you look at the hair, for example, I did not try to show every single strand. I used a couple of details like his eyelashes and stuff like that to give it a feel of more detail, but I did not overdo it. I did not do it everywhere. And I think that also helped to make it a cohesive, interesting piece, all in all. But yeah, I think that's all I can say at this point about this picture. This is my coffee Seán, my coffee Jacksepticeye. I don't really hate that much anymore on the first picture than I did directly after I painted it, but I believe the second one is a lot better, especially because of the contrast that automatically makes a picture pop more, but also not overdoing it with the details actually helped a lot in this case. So for me, actually the biggest lesson you should try to learn from my mistakes is coffee is different than the other materials. Coffee, yes, it behaves a lot like watercolor in some cases, in some not. So experiment a little bit more before you just jump in and start with the picture you really want to have as a finished product. Ease into it. What I have to say to the materials, so Top of the Morning coffee is not just an interesting paint, it's also pretty good coffee, I have to admit. Yes, I have also drank some at this point. It is not the cheapest coffee, and I was honestly surprised by the shipping costs.
Poor!
But anyway, if you like the video, then I would be very thankful for an actual like and perhaps even subscribe and ring that bell to not miss the next video. I would be very happy to welcome you again. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Have the greatest of days and goodbye.